In my last video where I talked about what I think modern Sonic can still stand to learn from the adventure era, I talked lightly about how we're kind of getting two different continuities of Sonic at the same time based on how many dimensions we want our Sonic in. That has, in part following Sonic Mania, led to an age where lots of Sonic games get these sort of tie-in media for the games where we get prequel comics and wonderful animations to bookend more recent releases. But aside from Sonic Mania and Origins, we haven't gotten much in the 2D space that hasn't been intended to stoke nostalgia and add more value to our memory of the good old days, although depending on who you ask, some of that value is highly subjective. So much to everyone's delight, after getting a 3D game that was received positively for the most part, we finally got a new 2D Sonic game that's actually all new. Enter Sonic Superstars, a new 2D experience that surprisingly isn't developed by Sonic Team, but instead a developer named Arzest. Never heard of these guys before. Wonder what they made. Well, I see they made a bunch of first-party Nintendo 3DS games like Yoshi's New Island, Hey Pikmin, and the 3DS port of Mario and Sonic at the Rio Olympic Games. Seems pretty low-key. No, it can't be. I thought we were free! Well, as concerning as that sounds, it's worth mentioning that Yuji Naka is still behind bars for insider trading, but instead, this project and team is being overseen by both Takashi Iizuka from Sega and Naoto Oshima, aka Sonic's other dad who actually designed him and hasn't worked on a Sonic game since Adventure 1, if you didn't know. You probably already know, I mean, you're probably a Sonic fan watching this video, but I digress. So thankfully, instead of a weird mashup of leftover ideas from dead Sega IPs, we have a game being overseen by people who it would seem know Sonic better than most. So outside of some really fun looking trailers, as well as a co-op multiplayer focus, this game was starting to look pretty fun, even though it's offline only co-op. Well, we'll see how that all shakes out, because today I'm taking a look at Sonic Superstars on PS5. And quick side note, I love this reversible cover. I think Sega should start doing this kind of thing more often, seriously.
Hey, yo, Giant, let's go!
The story of Sonic Superstars doesn't even begin in the game. It begins in a prequel comic, supplemented by a tie-in animated short. I usually have a problem with this most of the time because usually I feel that it takes away from a game's ability to fully flesh out a story, but in this case, it's Sonic, it's not that deep. And these are readily available online, since aside from the short on YouTube, Sega released the comic online for free in 3 separate parts. The setup for this is that Eggman has hired Fang the Hunter, tired of using fake names and being relegated to a cameo in Sonic Mania, to explore a new location called the North Star Islands, which may hold untold power that Eggman can use for yet another world-conquering scheme. So after running into a lot of indigenous life, including some really big flickies, and I mean really big flickies, damn those boys are thick, Fang captures it after a little pep talk where he talks about not only having squared up with Sonic, but also having almost stolen the Master Emerald 3 separate times before he meets a new character, ironically named Trip. After Trip falls flat on her face trying to defend herself, Fang forces her into helping him, and by extension Eggman, to navigate this island to find a way to beat Sonic and Co. It's about here where the gang shows up following Eggman to North Star Islands, where they proceed through each zone as you normally would, and on occasion you get moments after your usual Eggman boss battles where you see Fang and Trip have these Three Stooges type moments where Fang clearly thinks he's Mo and Trip is usually messing things up in that Larry or Curly kind of way. You can just tell she's not really for all this bad guy stuff, but you know, she ain't really got a choice it seems. Eventually though, she gets tired of Fang's shit when he steals the Chaos Emeralds from the group and gets above himself, and also at one point she ended up stranded and Amy helped her out. So she steals the emeralds back and knocks Fang out by turning into a gold Spiral Dragon. After this, she joins up with the gang before they eventually proceed to defeat Eggman in the Egg Fortress zone. After the 4-ish hours you're likely to spend on the first playthrough, you unlock Trip's story, which sounds interesting, but boy is it just playing the exact same game all over again as Trip, but with more spikes this time. The only other main difference here is that the final boss in Trip's story instead of Eggman is Fang, but infinitely more annoying. It's an incredibly long fight, and most of the attacks kill in one hit. He can even disrespect you in that Smash Brothers kind of way where they send you to hit the screen. This fight took me way too long. I almost wasn't even happy that I beat it because I'm upset at the thought that I was trying to beat it for more than a couple of hours. And if you thought that was the end, nuh-uh, because it's at this point that you unlock the last story, something very familiar to the Adventure era fans, but there's not much in the way of story. Basically, all the shenanigans Eggman caused makes a portal open up, and out of it comes a fucking giant dragon. I had almost completely forgotten about this part, but during the Trio of Trouble animation, Eggman's gang stumbles upon a mural depicting a purple stone and this dragon in it. He even did a little doodle that you can see in the Egg Fortress if you're paying attention, but whatever. You go super and fight it off as usual, but man, this fight pulled me out of my Frontiers boss fight highs and reminded me that 2 out of 3 times Supersonic final fights kinda suck. But whatever, you beat the dragon, seal it away, everyone celebrates, and that's Sonic Superstars. Pretty straightforward if you ask me. I honestly feel like more effort was made to present things to us outside of the game than in terms of story. Gotta be honest, I don't like this approach, because if you hadn't watched any of that outside media before jumping into the game, you're probably going to be very confused as to how we ended up fighting a big purple dragon with shoes over Eggman in the end. But it is what it is. Even with the added context, this isn't F. Scott Fitzgerald or something. We're playing Sonic. And playing Sonic is pretty solid to me, for the most part. If you've played Mania or Origins Plus recently, then you know what to expect here. I will start out immediately saying that I love the way Sonic and friends handle in this game. Every 2D game with 3D Sonic models since Generations hasn't really nailed the 2D feeling, if you ask me. Jumps were heavy, the momentum was a little sluggish. I can go on with that. And let's not even talk about Sonic Force controls. But here in 2.5D, they feel right. The jumps are snappy and precise. All the characters have all the moves you expect at this point, whereas Trip's main move is that she has a double jump and basically turns into her own version of the spike ball from Colors. And it makes the platforming actually kind of fun if you can ignore the surplus of spikes and pitfalls throughout the game. Those things added to my big negative for this game though. See, the co-op experience is the big selling point of this game, and to its credit, the co-op is seamless and it can be pretty fun. It's mostly chaotic, but you know, you can have a little fun with it. I wasn't able to get a full 4-player session going at any point because this is another game that insists local co-op upon you due to there being no online co-op, but I did get a couple of 2-player sessions and even a 3-player session that we recorded for the Giant Bento channel, and we had a lot of fun doing it. The only other annoying thing about co-op was the constant respawning from going off screen if one player is moving too quickly for you. But it's clear to me when playing in single player how much this game feels bloated when you're not distracted by that kind of messy fun. These stages are big, and it's obvious that exploration is the focus. That's usually the case in most Sonic games anyway, always finding new routes and such, but a lot of the level design promotes verticality more than usual and wants you to look at every nook and cranny you can find for bonuses. As such, on my first playthrough, some of these stages were taking me between 6 to 10 minutes at a time, which feels like an eternity in a Sonic game. Aside from the special stage rings where you have to Spider-Man your way to a Chaos Emerald, they brought back the Sonic 1 special stages at checkpoints, but these only lead to finding these big gold coins. They brought back the coin system from Origins with this, where you don't have lives and instead have the usual extra lives and such being replaced by getting these gold coins, which I feel removes some challenge due to there being no game overs. But a bunch of bosses contain plenty of bullshit to make you salty all the time, so whatever, that's the replacement, I guess. In this game though, you use these coins to buy parts for your own custom robot creations for the battle mode, which is a mode they hilariously assumed anybody was going to be playing, when in reality it just makes me a little upset that we got online functionality for this over online co-op. The only other silver lining to even engaging with this is that your robot shows up at the end of a later stage in a rehashing of the Mania Metal Sonic boss fight. Generally, I don't find any sort of enjoyment from getting these coins in the robot building section. It really feels kind of superfluous. What is more substantial to me is that when you get the Chaos Emerald, you get powers with each emerald now, which I love the idea of. It makes it so the emeralds are far more useful than just being for unlocking the super forms, which only Sonic and Trip have. Man, I just knew ever since the bubble thing in Sonic Heroes that they were never going to design super forms for these guys. But it is what it is. Every character can go super, and on a whim too, which I appreciate, because after not being able to turn it on and off at will for so long, having an off switch for these so you can save rings just hits different, you know? As I said though, each emerald comes pre-installed with their own unique powers now. There's a shadow clone power, the bullet power that lets you control a full 360-degree air dash, water which lets you swim, Vision, which shows you hidden rings and platforms, Ivy, which is Totally not that thing from Mario where those vines come out of a box. A slow-mo power, and the last power is just called Extra, and it does something extra for each character. For characters like Sonic, it gives them his homing attack, but for say Amy and Trip, they become Hammer Bros or get a Fire Flower. When it doesn't feel like Mario references, it feels like having Wisp powers on command. And though I find a majority of these powers super situational, I do get some use out of these. They really just add to the game as a whole. They don't take anything away from it. So I like this inclusion actually, and hopefully they keep doing this kind of thing in future games and maybe make more varied or interesting powers. That'd be nice. Even if we ignore those references I just made, I love the way this game looks. This is the first time in a long time where we got entirely new zones with new yet familiar motifs and music all throughout. A lot of these stages are very colorful and do offer a lot of eye candy for that first or second round of exploration. The world map is cool too. It smacks of Generations influence, but it's way more vibrant. Musically though, it's kind of a mixed bag. Earlier stages like Bridge Island and Speed Jungle have musical pieces that are straight up amazing, and they may be some of my favorite new Sonic songs in a long while that didn't come out of a boss fight. That's especially notable because I do not like this game's boss music. That first time I cleared Bridge Island Act 2 and got greeted with I was kind of taken out of the groove. Later stages like Sky Temple and the aforementioned Egg Fortress are kind of, it's Sonic 4 vibes, you know what I mean? I'm aware that multiple composers were on this game, so it's not all T-Lopes or Jun Sano all the way through this game, and to the trained ear of a Sonic fan, you can pretty much tell who did what. And I don't want to sound like I'm picking and choosing who I want to talk about here, but at points, the soundtrack sounds like it's trying to evoke Genesis era vibes, but I find myself wanting to hear more of what came first in this game because I think as a whole, that music fits this new era of classic Sonic better, you know? It's not all negative though, because if I'm gonna be honest, Sky Temple is a bop regardless of that. And then there's the character animations. I mentioned before in my video discussing Adventure's influence on the series that the current classic style games are doing this thing where in games and animations, all the characters pantomime in ways that are readable and let you see exactly what these characters are about without uttering a word. That's true here too. You get plenty of it watching Trip and Fang, but also look at that stance these guys hit when they get ready for a boss battle. I ain't much of an animation expert, but look at the squash and stretch when Sonic hits a pose at the end of a zone. Look at how much fun this all, well, looks. I think that's super notable for this game, and these kinds of things carried me when they made me do a carnival / casino, water, and desert level back to back. I'm not mad, you are. There are highs and lows here, but overall I had a lot of fun with Sonic Superstars. I'm not exactly sure what kind of staying power this is going to have in the long run, and I'm sure the $60 price tag is sure to draw some ire when people talk about the overall quality in the game. So I would probably say wait for a sale because those are happening a bunch lately, even though the game just came out. But this kind of experimentation with the formula is something that I can appreciate. Now, if they were to tighten up some of the level design and add online co-op in a future game, doesn't necessarily need to be here, then I think we'll really be cooking with gas. I guess Oshima-san still has some chops when Yuji Naka isn't ruining the fun for everybody. If you made it to the end, thank you for your time. But what are your thoughts on Sonic Superstars? Whether you loved it or found it disappointing, I'm up to discuss it, and so maybe leave a comment or like and subscribe along the way. I'd appreciate it a lot. I've got a few more projects coming up, some you may expect and some you may not, but we'll get there when we get there. For now, as always, my name is Hector, and I am one sleepy giant. I had a lot of fun, but I need a nap. Let's pick this up later. Take care.